I remember the day it happened as if it were etched into my mind with a fiery brand. It all started with a simple phone call. I was at work, knee-deep in spreadsheets and reports when I received a frantic message from my neighbor, Corinne. "You need to come home, it's about Lisa." My heart sank. It was a normal Wednesday, one of those days that should have passed without incident, but the tone of her voice sent a cold shiver down my spine. I rushed home, my mind racing through 1,000 scenarios. Was she hurt? Did something happen to the kids? As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a familiar blue truck parked outside. The logo on the side read Joe Plumbing. My blood ran cold. Joe, the plumber. I had always thought of him as a good guy, but now my gut twisted with a sense of impending doom. I stepped inside my home, the air thick with tension, and was greeted by an unsettling silence. I called out for Lisa, but all I heard was the echo of my voice. As I made my way through the house, I found her in the living room, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. It was then that I saw the telltale signs, the disheveled couch, the lingering scent of cologne that wasn't mine. "Lisa, what's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. She hesitated, her gaze darting away from mine, and that was when the truth began to unravel. "David, I need to tell you something." Her voice cracked and I felt my stomach drop. In that moment I knew. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the shame, and the undeniable truth. She had betrayed me. "I saw Joe," she confessed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It was a mistake, David. I didn't mean for it to happen. A mistake." I felt the world tilt on its axis. My heart raced and a surge of anger coursed through me, mingling with disbelief. The man I had trusted to fix our leaky pipes had violated the sanctity of my home, my marriage. I could hardly breathe. "Why?" I managed to choke out, my voice a mix of pain and fury. "How could you do this to me?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "It just happened. I was feeling lost and he was there. I didn't think." Each word felt like a dagger piercing deeper into my already shattered heart. I had always been there for her through thick and thin, and yet here she was, confessing to an affair with our plumber. The man who came to our house, who I had shared a beer with, who had laughed at my jokes while fixing our sink. As I stood there, consumed by a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, confusion, I felt an overwhelming urge to scream, to lash out, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. But instead, I just stood frozen, watching the woman I loved crumble before me. In that moment, the weight of my reality settled heavily on my shoulders. The life we had built together felt like it was slipping through my fingers, like grains of sand in an hourglass. I was drowning in a sea of despair, and the only lifeline I could see was revenge. What would I do next? I didn't know. But I felt a dark determination rising within me, fueled by the betrayal I had just uncovered. The image of Joe's smug face flashed in my mind, and I realized that I wouldn't just let this go. No, I would make him pay for what he had done to my marriage. As I sat on the edge of our bed, the silence of the house pressing down on me like a heavy blanket, my mind began to wander. I replayed every moment of our relationship, searching for clues, signs that I had overlooked. How could I have been so blind? Just months ago, we had celebrated our anniversary, laughing and reminiscing about our early days together. We had built a life filled with love, or so I thought. I remembered the first time we met. Lisa had a sparkle in her eyes that drew me in like a moth to a flame. We met at a coffee shop, both reaching for the last blueberry muffin. We laughed, and that spontaneous moment turned into hours of conversation. It felt like destiny. Over the years, we shared countless memories, road trips, cozy nights watching movies, and quiet mornings wrapped in each other's arms. We were a team, or so I believed. But in the back of my mind, I could sense the cracks forming. Our intimacy had faded over the years, replaced by routine and responsibilities. I had grown complacent, taking her for granted, thinking that love alone was enough to keep us together. I should have seen the signs, the late nights at work, the sudden interest in her appearance, the way she would glance at her phone with an anxious look. But I had chosen to trust, to believe that everything was fine. I felt a wave of inadequacy wash over me. Was I not enough for her? Did I fail to give her what she needed? I'd spent so much time working hard to provide for our family, but maybe I had neglected the emotional connection that once thrived between us. It was a bitter pill to swallow, realizing that I had let my guard down while she sought comfort in the arms of another man. The image of Joe, with his confident swagger and easy charm, haunted me. He was everything I wasn't at that moment. Was I too serious? Too focused on my job? I felt like a ghost, wandering through the remnants of a life I thought I understood. I could almost hear the echo of laughter that had once filled our home, now replaced by the weight of betrayal. In my mind, I replayed the conversations we had shared. Lisa had often expressed feeling overwhelmed, like she was losing herself in the chaos of our lives. I had thought she just needed a break, a chance to reconnect with who she was outside of being a wife and mother. I never imagined she would seek solace with someone else, let alone the plumber of all people. The anger bubbled beneath the surface, but it was mixed with a deep sadness. I felt like a fool, played for a sucker by the very people I had trusted. I wanted to scream, to confront Lisa again, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. I needed to gather my thoughts, to channel this pain into something productive. Revenge was now a seed planted in my mind, and I couldn't shake the idea that Joe deserved to suffer for his actions. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and I felt a primal urge to protect what was left of my marriage, even if it meant tearing down the man who had tried to take it from me. As I sat there, I began to formulate a plan, one that would allow me to regain some control over a situation that had spiraled out of my grasp. I envisioned the look on Joe's face as his reputation crumbled, as he faced the consequences of his betrayal. I knew it was wrong, but in that moment, the thought of revenge brought me a flicker of satisfaction. I would make him regret ever stepping foot in my home. I would expose him for the fraud he was, a man who preyed on the vulnerabilities of others. I could already feel the gears in my mind turning, plotting a course of action that would ensure he would pay for his indiscretions. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but with each passing moment, the desire for revenge began to overshadow my sorrow. I was no longer just a victim. I would become the architect of Joe's downfall. The next day, I found myself standing in front of Lisa, my heart heavy with unresolved emotions. The air was thick with tension, and every word felt like a landmine waiting to explode. I had spent the night tossing and turning, the images of her with Joe replaying in my mind like a broken record. I was done with the silence. It was time to confront the woman I had loved for so long, the woman who had shattered my trust. She was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes downcast. I could see the remnants of tears on her cheeks, but they did little to soften the anger boiling within me. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady, though my insides felt like a storm. "David, I'm so sorry," she started, but I cut her off. Sorry doesn't undo what you've done. You slept with Joe, our plumber." The words felt like a punch to my gut. I could see her flinch. It was as if I had struck her physically. I know, it was a mistake," she said, her voice breaking. "I never meant for it to happen. I was feeling so lost, and he was there. He was there," I repeated incredulously. "Is that your justification? You let him into our home, into our lives, and you think that's you think that's enough?" The anger surged in me, and I took a step closer, my fists clenching at my sides. I could feel the heat radiating from my body, a mixture of betrayal and a desperate need for answers. "What did he offer you that I could? Was I not enough? Was I just some convenient option for you?" Lisa looked up, her eyes filled with anguish. "It wasn't about you, David. It was about me. I lost myself in our marriage. I felt invisible. Joe made me feel seen. Seen." I spat, incredulous. "You chose to cheat on me, and now you want to play the victim. How do you think I feel? How do you think your choice affects our family?" The tears streamed down her face as she struggled to find words. "I didn't think it would go that far. It was just a moment, a lapse in judgment. I swear it meant nothing." "Nothing," I echoed bitterly. "You think it's nothing when you share your body with another man, when you betray the vows we took. You have no idea what you've done, Lisa." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I didn't want her touch, not now. I felt rage and sorrow warring in my chest, and I struggled to keep my voice steady. "You need to understand that this isn't just about you. It's about us, our life, and everything we've built. You threw it away for a few moments of attention from a man who doesn't care about you." "I do care about you," she pleaded, desperation lacing her voice. I love you, David. I made a terrible mistake and I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make it right. Anything. I scoffed, incredulous. What could you possibly do to make this right? You've broken my trust and I don't know if I can ever forgive you. The confrontation reached a fever pitch and I could feel the walls closing in around us. I wanted to scream to let all the pain and anger spill out, but a part of me held back. I didn't want to hurt her, but I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal. David, please, she begged, her voice cracking. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just so lost. Lost. I echoed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. You didn't even try to find your way back. Instead, you chose to betray me. You chose to betray our family. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the weight of her actions settling heavily on her shoulders, but it did little to ease the turmoil inside me. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion, and I knew that nothing she said could erase what had happened. I need time, I finally said, my voice low and trembling. I can't do this right now. I can't look at you without seeing him. Her face crumpled and I turned away, feeling a mix of satisfaction and heartache. I was the one who had been wronged, yet in that moment I felt utterly defeated. I walked out of the room, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge, of how I would make Joe pay for this betrayal. I was done playing the victim. It was time to take control of my life and my emotions. It was time to make Joe regret everything. In the days that followed the confrontation, a storm brewed within me. I felt like a volcano ready to erupt, the anger simmering just below the surface. I spent my time at work in a daze, unable to focus on anything other than the betrayal that had shattered my world. I kept thinking about Joe, the man who had taken advantage of my trust, and I knew that I couldn't just let this go. I needed a plan. The more I thought about it, the clearer the path became. Joe had built a reputation in our community as a reliable plumber, a family man with a smile that could charm anyone. But beneath that facade was a man who had crossed a line that I was determined to erase. I would take away his credibility, his livelihood, and everything he had worked for. It felt right, almost cathartic, to think of the consequences he would face for his actions. I started by compiling information. I spent hours on social media, digging through Joe's profiles, looking for anything that could serve as leverage. I found pictures of him with his family, snippets of his business operations, and even a few questionable reviews from disgruntled customers. It was all there, waiting for me to exploit it. I couldn't shake the feeling of excitement mixed with dread as I pieced together my plan. The moral implications of what I was about to do weighed heavily on me, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I was tired of feeling powerless. This was my chance to regain control, to make Joe feel the same pain I had endured. My plan took shape. I would start by anonymously posting reviews online. I would craft stories that highlighted Joe's incompetence, embellishing the truth just enough to make them believable. I imagined customers reading the reviews and thinking twice before hearing him. The idea of his phone ringing less, of his business suffering, filled me with a sense of satisfaction. As I formulated my strategy, I couldn't help but think about Lisa. Would she find out what I was doing? Would she be ashamed of me? But in that moment, those thoughts were drowned out by the fire of revenge. I was no longer the victim. I was the one taking action, and it felt empowering. I spent the next few days drafting my reviews, making sure to vary the accounts. One would talk about how Joe had left a job unfinished. Another would claim he had overcharged for simple repairs. I wanted to paint a picture of a man who was unreliable, someone who couldn't be trusted. I even contemplated reaching out to some of his former clients, asking them to share their own negative experiences. The more I wrote, the more I felt the weight of my pain lifting. Each keystroke was cathartic, a release of the pent-up frustration that had been building since I discovered the affair. I felt like a puppeteer, pulling the strings of Joe's fate, and it exhilarated me. But as the plan solidified, a flicker of doubt crept in. Was I really willing to destroy a man's life over a moment of weakness? I tried to push those thoughts aside, convincing myself that he had brought this upon himself. He had chosen to betray me, to ruin my marriage, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. Late one night, as I sat in front of my computer, I finally clicked Submit on the first review. My heart raced as I watched the screen refresh, the words I had crafted appearing for the world to see. It felt like a release, a moment of triumph. I was taking back control, and I was determined to see it through. In the days that followed, I continued my campaign, posting more reviews and sharing my experiences in community forums. I watched as Joe's business began to suffer. His once constant flow of clients dwindled, and I felt a rush of satisfaction each time I saw a new negative comment under his posts. I was becoming the architect of his downfall, and it was intoxicating. But as I reveled in my success, a part of me began to wonder, what would this accomplish in the long run? Would destroying Joe bring me peace, or would it only deepen the chasm between Lisa and me? I tried to shake off the nagging doubts, focusing instead on the thrill of revenge. I had ignited a fire, and I was determined to fan the flames until Joe's business went down the drain, just like my marriage. As the days turned into weeks, I watched with a mix of satisfaction and unease as Joe's business began to crumble. The reviews I had posted spread like wildfire, each one adding fuel to the fire I had ignited. I could see the toll it was taking on him. His social media presence became increasingly desperate, filled with pleas for customers to give him a chance, to overlook the negative feedback. Each post was a reminder of the power I wielded, and it felt intoxicating. I continued to refine my strategy, using every resource at my disposal to ensure that Joe's reputation was tarnished beyond repair. I contacted former clients of his, sharing my story and encouraging them to speak up about their negative experiences. Some were hesitant, unsure about the direction I was pushing them in, but others were eager to join in on the vendetta. It was a strange alliance, built on the shared desire to see Joe knock down a peg, and I reveled in the chaos. One evening, as I sat at the local bar nursing a drink, I overheard a couple discussing their recent plumbing issues. They mentioned Joe's name, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was my chance to plant the seeds of doubt in their minds. I approached them, feigning casual interest in their conversation. "Did you say you called Joe?" I interjected, trying to sound nonchalant. "I've heard some troubling things about him lately. You might want to consider looking elsewhere." The couple exchanged glances, curiosity piqued. I casually recounted my experience, embellishing the details for effect. I spoke about how he had overcharged me for simple repairs and left jobs unfinished. With every word, I could see the couple's expressions change, doubt creeping into their minds. "Really?" "We were just about to call him," one of them said, skepticism evident in their voice. "Yeah, I'd think twice if I were you," I replied, feeling a rush of triumph. "You deserve someone who will treat you right, not someone who takes advantage of people." As they nodded, I felt a dark satisfaction wash over me. I was becoming a puppet master, pulling the strings of Joe's fate. Each encounter, each conversation, added another layer to my revenge. But even as I executed my plan, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered doubts. Was this really what I wanted? The thrill of revenge was exhilarating, but it was also leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. I was destroying a man's livelihood, and for what? To ease my own pain. I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the momentum I had built. I began to gather more evidence, screenshots of Joe's failed jobs and complaints from customers. I compiled everything into a neatly organized file, ready to unleash it at the right moment. I wanted to ensure that when the final blow came, it would be devastating. Then came the day when I received an anonymous tip. A friend of a friend had heard whispers about Joe's plumbing business facing serious trouble. Word on the street was that he was struggling to pay his bills, and his reputation was sinking fast. I felt a thrill of excitement mixed with guilt. I was inching closer to my goal, but at what cost? I decided it was time to escalate my efforts. I reached out to local news outlets, sharing my story and Joe's questionable practices. I painted a picture of a man who had built his business on deception, a man who didn't care about the people he served. I wanted to ensure that everyone knew the truth. As the article circulated, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I was in control, and I was determined to see it through. Joe's name was becoming synonymous with incompetence, and I took twisted pleasure in watching his world unravel. But with each victory, the shadows of doubt grew larger. I could see the toll it was taking on Lisa as well. She had begged me to stop, to consider the consequences of my actions, but I was too far gone, too consumed by the fire of revenge. I had lost sight of the man I once was, replaced by someone who thrived on destruction. One night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I wondered how far I was willing to go. I had hurt Joe, but I had also hurt myself in the process. My marriage was still in ruins, and the pain of betrayal lingered in the air like a ghost. I had focused so much on revenge that I had neglected to address the real issues at hand. But I couldn't turn back now. I was in too deep, and I had to see it through to the end. I felt like a puppet master, and I wasn't ready to cut the strings just yet. Joe had taken something from me, and I was determined to take everything from him in return. The final act of my revenge was approaching, and I could feel the excitement bubbling within me. I was ready to pull the trigger and watch everything come crashing down. The climax of my revenge unfolded like a scene from a dark thriller. I had orchestrated a campaign that left Joe's reputation in tatters, and I felt a rush of exhilaration at the chaos I had created. The local news picked up the story, and Joe's business was officially labeled a scam. Customers turned away in droves, and I watched from the shadows, a spectator to the destruction I had wrought. But as the dust began to settle, the initial thrill faded into something darker. The satisfaction I had hoped to feel was replaced by an unsettling emptiness. I had achieved what I set out to do, but at what cost? I had become a man consumed by vengeance, and now I stood amidst the ruins of not just Joe's life, but my own. Lisa had been quiet since the storm of my actions began. She watched as I reveled in Joe's downfall, her expression a mix of concern and disappointment. I could see the hurt in her eyes, and it gnawed at me. I had become the very thing I despised, a man who let anger dictate his actions, a man who destroyed another for a moment of fleeting satisfaction. One evening, as I sat on the couch staring blankly at the television, Lisa finally broke the silence. "David, this isn't who you are," she said softly. Her voice trembled with emotion, and I felt a pang of guilt wash over me. "You've become so consumed by this that I don't even recognize you anymore." I turned to look at her, and the weight of her words hit me like a freight train. "I did this for us," I replied, though my voice lacked conviction. "He took everything from me. I had to make him pay." "But at what cost?" she pressed, tears brimming in her eyes. "You're losing yourself in this obsession. You've hurt him, yes, but you're hurting yourself too. Is this really what you want?" Her words echoed in my mind, and I realized that she was right. I had let my desire for revenge overshadow everything else, and in doing so I had lost sight of what truly mattered. My marriage was hanging by a thread, and I was too blinded by anger to see it. In that moment of clarity, I felt a wave of shame wash over me. I had become a man I never wanted to be, someone who thrived on the suffering of others. The thrill of revenge had turned into a bitter poison, and I could feel it seeping into every aspect of my life. "I don't know how to fix this," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I thought that punishing him would somehow heal the wounds, but now I see that it's only made things worse. Lisa reached for my hand, her touch grounding me. "It's not too late, David. You can still choose to be better. You can let go of this anger and focus on rebuilding what we've lost." The thought of letting go felt daunting. I had invested so much energy into this revenge, but I realized that the path I was on would only lead to further destruction. I had to reclaim my life, to rebuild not just my marriage but also my sense of self. Over the next few days, I took a step back from the chaos I had created. I stopped posting reviews, ceased my campaign against Joe, and focused on healing. I reached out to those I had contacted during my revenge, asking them to reconsider their words and actions. I didn't know if it would make a difference, but I had to try to right the wrongs I had committed. As I worked to rebuild my marriage, Lisa and I began to communicate more openly. We talked about our feelings, our fears, and the cracks that had formed in our relationship. It was difficult, but with each conversation, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We were slowly starting to find our way back to one another, and it felt like a fragile but necessary step forward. Joe's business did struggle, but as time passed, I learned that he was not the monster I had painted him to be. He had his own struggles, his own mistakes, and while I couldn't excuse what he had done, I realized that my revenge had only perpetuated a cycle of pain. In the end, I chose to let go of the anger that had consumed me. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the temptation to lash out still lingered. But I reminded myself that true strength lay in forgiveness, in reclaiming my life not through vengeance but through understanding and growth. As I sat with Lisa one evening, our fingers intertwined, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We were still healing, but we were healing together. I had learned that while betrayal could shatter trust, the journey towards rebuilding it required vulnerability, honesty, and a willingness to confront the shadows within myself. And in that moment, I knew that I had chosen the right path. I was no longer the man who sought revenge. I was a man who was learning to forgive, not just Joe, but myself.